Tonight in rural Colorado, billionaire Jose Martinez unlocked the side gate to his estate with a biometric key, expecting silence. A delayed return home. He'd left a merger meeting in chaos just hours before, and he hadn't told anyone he was coming back. His shoes echoed down the polished hallway. Everything looked untouched, but from the second-floor landing, a sound broke the calm. Not a cry, more like a breath caught mid-sob. Thin, wet, desperate. Jose froze. "James," he called. No answer. His throat tightened. He moved faster. He checked the nursery. Empty. The twins' bottles sat rinsed in the drying rack. He passed the hallway closet, still half open. Then he pushed the door to the master bedroom, and time stopped. James and Josh were bound at the ankles with soft rope, their tiny bodies leaning into a slumped figure, Janet. The nanny's arms were tied above her head to the bedpost, her lips sealed with silver tape. Her eyes were glassy with terror, but alert. Alert enough to meet his like they'd been waiting for him. His phone slipped from his palm and hit the carpet with a dead thud. He lunged forward, panic eclipsing thought. He ripped the tape off James's ankles first, then Josh's. Their small chests rose and fell rapidly. Jose's hands shook so violently that when he tore at the restraints on Janet, the edge of the tape cut deep into his skin. "Hold on," he breathed. "I've got you." Janet coughed when the gag came off, eyes wide. She tried to speak, but nothing came. Just a croaked exhale and a flicker of something close to shame. Jose looked around. No shattered glass, no broken locks, no alarm blaring. The silence was louder than anything else. Police arrived within minutes. Officers moved with quiet efficiency, snapping gloves, taking photos, searching for forced entry that didn't exist. The house's state-of-the-art system showed no alert, no breach, just a smooth 3-hour gap in surveillance, looping footage that made the entire nightmare seem unreal. One detective gently asked, "Who else has access to this house, Mr. Martinez?" Jose didn't answer at first. His gaze stayed locked on the woman sitting in a nearby armchair, gently rocking James in her arms. Janet didn't ask for permission. She simply reached for the child when he whimpered, humming something soft, familiar. She hadn't left, even when she was the one most doubted, even when the questions started circling like vultures. Already Jose's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Headlines forming. A photo of the estate's long driveway snapped by some local passerby. Asterisk tech mogul's home in police lockdown. Nanny at scene, asterisk. He didn't open it. He looked back at the woman in the chair and the sons she held. And he realized this wasn't just a crime scene. It was a message. Jose Martinez wasn't supposed to be home tonight. At 42, he was the founder of TechCore, a stealth-mode logistics firm with government contracts and stock whisperers clawing for a peek. He lived deliberately off radar, raising his twin boys alone after a custody war scorched what was left of his marriage. His home, tucked into the hills of Colorado, was a fortress. Cameras, biometric locks, and only a handful of trusted staff. Janet Cooper had been with them just 9 months, quiet, precise, unflinching. He thought he knew who she was. Tonight would change everything. The house was in lockdown by midnight. Blue and red lights painted the long windows like a silent alarm the world could see. Inside, it felt colder, quieter, the kind of quiet that settles over shock like a blanket too heavy to lift. Jose sat at the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, blood dried along the ridge of his palm. Across from him, Janet held Josh, rocking gently in one of the nursery's upholstered chairs. Her wrists bore the faint imprint of the rope, a bruise already blooming along one arm. But she didn't ask for painkillers. She didn't even ask for water. She just hummed a low, circular melody that sounded like something her mother might have sung. Something southern, something old. Officers moved through the house with practiced care, opening drawers, noting timestamps, murmuring into radios. Their questions were sharp but routine. Any signs of forced entry? Nothing so far, sir. Locks are clean. Windows secure. Security system, who controls it? Only me and the night manager, Jose said, both biometrically linked. And where is your night manager? Off tonight, he muttered. Scheduled days off rotate. Who else has access to the code panel? Silence. His mouth opened, but no words followed. He didn't know. Not exactly. The estate smart system was advanced, coded, layered, restricted to a few staff, but a few was too many when someone had clearly overridden it. Surveillance showed the same 3-hour footage looped. Whoever had done this hadn't just broken in. They'd bypassed the whole house without leaving a trace. This was no random crime. This was precision. The lead detective, a woman in her 40s with crow's feet and steady hands, stepped aside to take a call. When she returned, her voice was calm but edged. Mr. Martinez, it appears someone's leaked this. We're seeing reports online. Media will start circling. Jose blinked. Leaked? She nodded. Local blogger posted a photo of your driveway, claimed there was a police presence. It's already hit national threads. He stood too fast. My children were tied up. This isn't a scandal. It's a crime scene. The detective's expression didn't change. It will be both. Moments later, his phone buzzed again. Notifications stacked like falling bricks. Billionaire break-in. Black nanny found at abduction scene, suspect or savior, TechCore CEO's home breached, inside job. He turned the screen face down. In the other room, an officer quietly guided Janet into a chair. Another offered her a warm blanket, but the subtext was there in the way their questions hovered just a little longer around her answers. What do you remember, ma'am? I was feeding them lunch. I put them down. Then nothing. I woke up tied. Did you recognize any voices, any sounds before? She shook her head. I don't remember anything after the bottle warmer beeped. Then pain. Darkness. Any visitors today? No, she said. Just deliveries. They logged her statement, took photos of her wrists, and handed her a printed document, temporary release form, pending further investigation. Janet signed without a word. Jose's lawyer, Patrick Reynolds, arrived in a navy coat and a voice 1 octave too calm. He pulled Jose aside near the study. You need to get in front of this, he said. Right now, the optics are dangerous. Black woman, children tied. You silent. I'm not thinking about optics, Jose snapped. You should be. TechCore goes public next quarter. We're vulnerable. This can't become a media circus. Jose clenched his jaw. So what? We fire her. Quiet severance. Waiver, NDA. We can protect her and you. And if she's not guilty? Patrick shrugged. It doesn't matter. The court of public opinion has already started the trial. Jose looked back toward the living room. Janet sat with James now, the boy curled in her lap, thumb in his mouth. Her posture never wavered. She didn't cry, didn't plead, just held him. Later that night, when the last of the officers left, she stood by the doorway with her coat in her hand. Jose stopped her. Where are you going? I figured you'd want me gone, she said. Her voice was calm, but something in her eyes, exhaustion maybe, or pride, held firm. I don't, he replied. She looked down at the bundle in her arms. James whimpered once, and she rocked him instinctively. They need routine, she whispered. I can give them that. Jose didn't respond, not with words. He simply stepped aside. She stayed. And in the silence of that cold house, with the headlines outside sharpening their claws, and the walls still echoing with confusion, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something closer to a beginning. The house felt quieter in the daylight, not calmer, just hushed. The kind of hush that lingers after something violent has passed through. The furniture stood where it always had. The cameras blinked red, waiting, but the air still carried something taut beneath the surface, like everything was holding its breath. Josh had finally fallen asleep upstairs, his cheeks flushed from crying, a soft wheeze in his breath. Jose watched him for a while before slipping out of the nursery, closing the door behind him without sound. He found Janet in the kitchen. She stood at the counter, folding small bibs into precise squares. There was no music, no coffee brewing, just the rhythm of her hands and the hum of the fridge. "Can I sit?" he asked. She nodded without looking up. "Of course." He pulled out the chair opposite hers and sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Jose wasn't used to silence feeling this loud. "I need to know what happened," he said finally. Janet didn't flinch. She set the last bib down, wiped her hands on her pants, and slowly lowered herself into the chair across from him. "I gave them lunch. Carrots and bananas." Josh didn't like the carrots, she said softly, a hint of a smile touching her lips before vanishing. "Then I rocked them. James fell asleep first." She traced a circle on the wooden table with one finger. "I remember checking the bottle warmer. I remember the beep. Then I don't know." She looked up at him, and her eyes were steadier than he expected. "I woke up in pain. My arms were," she paused, swallowed. "Pulled up. Couldn't move. Tape on my mouth. Boys were crying." She blinked, slow and careful, like she was trying not to cry again. Jose's throat tightened. "You didn't see who?" "No. Not even a shadow." Her voice was flat, tired. "Just rope." Then the door opened. "You walked in." He nodded, staring down at his own hands, remembering the way her wrists had looked, the bruises, the stillness. "You didn't scream," he murmured. "I couldn't." He looked up. "You didn't panic." She finally met his gaze, something quiet but fierce in her expression. "I didn't have that luxury." Silence fell again. This time it stretched longer. Jose almost stood up, almost let her retreat back into whatever space she kept her thoughts in. But something stopped him. "Why are you still here?" he asked, softer than before. Janet looked past him toward the window. Afternoon light spilled across the floor in long rectangles. "Because those boys need normal," she said. "And because I don't run from hard things." He leaned back, watching her. "Really? You're not just a nanny." She gave a dry, tired laugh. "No. But that's what I applied for." Another pause. Then she spoke again, this time without being asked. "I used to work at a pediatric care center in Denver," she said. "Kids with developmental delays. Some couldn't walk, some couldn't speak. We had this blue room full of pillows and music. It was the only place some of them smiled." Jose listened, still. "We lost funding 2 years ago. Some senator cut the money, said we were a soft cost. Half the families couldn't afford private care. We all got pink slips." She laced her fingers together, resting them on the table. "My brother lived with me, younger, hot-headed. He had a run-in with the police. Wrong time, wrong place. They said it was a mistake." Her voice didn't break, but something in her hands tensed, like the pain lived there instead. "They never even showed me the footage." She took a breath. "After he died, I left. I didn't want to march. I didn't want to post hashtags. I just wanted quiet. So I moved here. This job showed up in a staffing app. Said live in, high security, family needs discretion. Sounded perfect. Jose said nothing. He wasn't sure he had words that wouldn't feel hollow. Janet stood slowly. She picked up one of the twins' bibs, refolded it, then set it back down. "I'm not here to be a hero," she said. "I'm not here to be your story. I just want to work. Feed the boys. Keep them safe. That's all." Jose's voice was low. "I believe you." She nodded once. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." She walked past him then, heading upstairs to check on Josh. Jose sat alone in the kitchen, the scent of apple soap lingering faintly in the air, and realized something simple but sharp. For the first time in a long time, he'd actually listened, not negotiated, not managed, not controlled. Just listened. And he saw her now, not just as the woman folding onesies and checking bottle temperatures, but as someone carrying grief he couldn't name, and a strength he couldn't ignore. The house was still under 24-hour watch, but Jose didn't trust the locks anymore. By late morning, the estate staff had been trimmed to essential personnel only. 2 rotating security agents and the part-time housekeeper who didn't speak much English and had been with them since before the twins were born. Janet stayed. That had never been questioned. Not anymore. But trust, that was a shifting thing. Jose stood inside his bedroom, staring at the smooth stretch of wall behind the headboard. From the outside, it was seamless. Nothing to suggest anything hidden. But if you pressed 3 fingers into the right corner, held for 2 seconds, then slid left, the panel clicked open with a faint pneumatic sigh. He reached inside and pulled the door the rest of the way. The biometric safe stared back at him. Oval-shaped scanner, voice-activated backup, retinal reader, offline now. It should have been impenetrable. Jose touched the scanner. A green ring spun once before the mechanism unlocked with a soft whir. Inside, the folders were still stacked, labels clean, typed, but the weight felt wrong. He pulled them out, flipping through quickly. The final folder, thinner than it should have been, was missing 3 files. Gone. His stomach tightened. This wasn't about the twins. It never was. These weren't random attackers. No signs of ransom, no outside threats. And Janet, if she'd been part of it, why fake being tied up? Why stay after the police left? Why sit in the nursery at night humming lullabies instead of disappearing with stolen secrets? Jose took the remaining documents to his office on the 2nd floor. The security feed still looped the same 3-hour window, camera angles frozen in a distortion of normal. He locked the office door behind him and dialed an encrypted number. Apex Analytics. This is Martinez. Priority trace. I need a full analysis of a breach. Internal override, physical and digital. How recent? Less than 48 hours. Source, my house. A pause. We'll assemble a team. Expect preliminary findings within 6 hours. Jose hung up, then leaned back in his chair, pressing his palms to his eyes. The missing files were part of a classified brief tied to a federal tech contract, one that, if leaked, could trigger congressional hearings, cancel deals, and shift stock by billions. It wasn't public yet. Not even his board knew the full scope. Only a few names did. He looked at the list again. His legal team, the interim CTO, one financial officer, and a security administrator named Brandon Kell, who had helped install the estate's new system 6 months earlier. Brandon had been hired through a boutique cybersecurity firm, personal recommendation. His name hadn't raised any flags until now. Jose stood and walked to the nursery. The door was cracked open. Inside, Janet was sitting cross-legged on the floor, James snuggled against her chest, eyes drifting closed. Josh was beside her, one chubby fist curled around her sleeve like he wouldn't let her go. She didn't see Jose watching. Her face was soft, tired, but present. Her free hand gently patted James's back in an unconscious rhythm. He felt something twist in his chest. Outside these walls, Janet's name was still circling headlines. Every news aggregator had picked it up. Phrases like "found at the scene" and "unconfirmed role in incident" had painted her in shadow without saying anything outright. Inside the house, she moved like a lighthouse, calm, necessary, unwavering. And still, a sliver of doubt remained. Not about her guilt, about how easily he had considered it. He closed the door without making a sound. 6 hours later, Apex called back. The override had come from inside the estate's admin panel, logged through a secondary access code written directly into the system, a backdoor, one not authorized or documented. It was installed with your last security upgrade, the analyst explained. 2 months ago. Who authorized that build? The line crackled. Then the name came through. Brandon Kell. Jose didn't move. His jaw set. Brandon had sat in this office, had eaten from his kitchen, had watched the boys toddle around the living room while testing the perimeter scans. He was also the one who'd worked with Jose's ex-wife's attorney during the custody review. The back door wasn't just a breach, it was betrayal. That night, Jose stood by the twins' crib while Janet gently tucked Josh under a soft fleece blanket. The fever had broken, but their skin still glistened with the last traces of sweat. "Do you need anything?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. She started to leave. "Janet." She paused. He didn't know what he was going to say until the words came. "You stayed." She turned toward him. Her expression didn't shift. "I told you. I don't run from hard things." He nodded, then added, "The breach was from the inside." Janet raised her eyebrows just slightly, but she didn't look surprised. "I figured," she said. Jose looked at her a moment longer, and for the first time since that day, he felt something close to clarity. The break-in wasn't about his children. It was about his secrets. And someone inside had used his sons to distract him from the real prize. But they hadn't counted on Janet. And they hadn't counted on what that would awaken in him. It started with a whimper. Jose had been pacing the hall outside the nursery, reviewing encryption logs on his tablet when he heard it. A small mewing cry, not panicked, not loud, just off. He stepped inside. James was flushed, skin clammy, eyes glassy. Jose pressed the back of his hand to the boy's forehead, then again, slower. "Burning." He touched Josh next. "Cool for now." Janet was downstairs sorting laundry. Jose called for her once, then again, louder. She came running, barefoot, towel still in her hand. One look at James and the towel dropped. "Water," she said, crossing to the crib. "Get me water and the thermometer. Now." Jose moved, legs sluggish, hands shaking before he even reached the sink. By the time he got back, James had started to cry, real tears now, wet, high-pitched, agitated. Janet took the thermometer and slid it under his arm, whispering something soft, something Jose couldn't catch. Her voice lowered into a hum, a pattern. The beep came. 103.2. She didn't flinch. "Call the on-call nurse," she said, reaching for a fresh onesie. "Tell her it's a sustained high fever. No vomiting, no rash, no seizure activity yet." Jose's fingers fumbled across his screen. He misdialed twice. When the nurse finally picked up, he could barely follow her questions. He repeated things out of order, left out key details. He didn't even remember which formula James had last eaten. Janet took the phone from him. "Hi, this is Janet Cooper," she said, calm, steady. "I'm the primary caregiver for James and Josh Martinez. One of the twins is spiking 103.2 and rising. No seizure signs yet. Cool compresses started, fluids in progress. We'll monitor breathing and wake cycles, but I want you on standby." She nodded, listening, then hung up. "I've got this," she said, not unkindly. And she did. For 6 straight hours, she moved between the boys like she'd trained for this moment her whole life. Cloth, rock, check, repeat. When Josh started heating up an hour later, she didn't flinch. She just adjusted. 2 washcloths soaked in cool water rotated constantly. She switched them without looking. She sang the same melody again, something soft, almost sorrowful. It wasn't for the boys, Jose realized. It was for her. He stood in the doorway, useless, watching, holding a bottle he hadn't warmed correctly, folding a blanket she didn't need. Eventually, he stepped closer. "Show me," he said. She glanced up, then nodded. "Hold James upright, not flat. His chest needs to stay higher than his belly so he can breathe easier. Slow circles on his back. Nothing fast. Just like this." She demonstrated on Josh. The motion was gentle, controlled. Jose copied her poorly at first, but James stopped fussing. He sat in the glider with the boy in his arms, mimicking the rhythm. "Better," Janet murmured. He looked over at her. Her shirt was damp from sweat and condensation. Her eyes tired but focused. "You should rest," he said. She arched an eyebrow. "I'm good. I mean it." "So do I." Jose didn't argue. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why are you still here?" The question hung in the dim room. Not accusatory, not skeptical, just real. Janet looked at him for a long moment. The hum of the white noise machine filled the silence. Then she answered, just as quietly, "Because they need me." She shifted Josh onto her chest and started to sway. "And so do you." Jose didn't reply. He just watched her. This woman the media had reduced to a headline. The world had framed in suspicion. Here, in the half-light, she was a fortress. He realized suddenly, painfully, how far he'd drifted from the things that mattered. He'd built walls of code and power, but no one had taught him how to comfort a crying child. Janet had. Not with degrees, not with titles. With presence. With steadiness. With something closer to love. By dawn, the boys' fevers had broken. James stirred first, still weak but alert, mouth searching for a bottle. Josh followed an hour later. Janet sat slumped on the floor with both boys curled against her, arms loose but protective. Jose brought her water. She drank it slowly. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, then added, "You did okay." He laughed once, softly, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a failure to be taught by someone else. The email came at 2:13 a.m., marked urgent. No subject line, just a compressed folder from Apex Analytics and a one-line message, "You'll want to see this in private." Jose opened it alone, sitting in his firm's off-site operations office in Denver. The lights dimmed, the streets outside slick with rain. Inside the folder, metadata logs, line item overrides, and one flagged name. Kell, Brandon, security admin, cleared 6 months ago. Brought in after an internal review recommended fresh eyes on the estate's digital blind spots. Smart, polished, always smiling. He was also tied, very quietly, to the law firm representing Jose's ex-wife in their custody case. Jose stared at the screen. One access point had been backdated to 72 hours before the break-in. A silent software update, invisible unless you knew where to look. And now he did. The override had allowed for real-time control of the estate's cameras, alarm delays, even the biometric panel on the safe. The break-in hadn't been a breach. It had been an invitation. And Janet, tied up, left like collateral, had been the decoy. A soft target. Disposable. Jose sat still for a long time. Then he stood and called a number he'd kept saved but never used. Brandon Kell didn't show up at the office that morning. Jose found him instead in a downtown Denver coffee shop, sipping oat milk foam like nothing had ever happened. The man's eyes flickered when Jose approached, but he didn't run. "Morning, Mr. Martinez," Brandon said, like they were still colleagues. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Jose didn't sit. "You used my house like a pawn shop," he said flatly. "You sold access. My sons were used as props, and you left a woman tied to a bed just to make it believable." Brandon sipped his drink. "I didn't tie anyone up. But you opened the door for someone who did." The man didn't blink. "I did what I was paid to do," he said. "I don't write the playbook." Jose leaned in slightly. Not a threat. Not even a whisper of violence. Just presence. "Who paid you?" Brandon shrugged. "Doesn't matter now. You found out. Congrats." Jose stared at him. "Then my ex-wife." Brandon's silence was confirmation enough. "She needed leverage," he said after a beat. "Custody cases are brutal. She knew you'd go nuclear if your image got touched. If the story hit the press just right, black nanny, missing files, tied children, it would snowball. You'd settle. You'd go quiet. She'd win." He looked up. "She almost did." Jose said nothing. Brandon leaned back, arrogant. "Look, everyone has a price." Jose didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't reach for his phone. He just turned and walked away. His silence was louder than anything else. Back at the estate, dusk settled like a bruise along the horizon. The boys had been given their baths. The monitors buzzed faintly in the hallway. Jose stood outside the nursery door. Inside, Janet sat in the rocker with Josh curled against her chest, eyes closed, breath even. She ran a slow hand over his back in circles. The same lullaby, the same rhythm, the same steadiness. Nothing performative. Nothing for show. Just love. Undemanding, unspoken love. Jose felt something twist in him. Not rage, not victory, shame. Not for what had happened, but for how quickly he'd considered her guilty. How reflexively he'd wondered if she'd had a part in it. He thought of Brandon's smirk. Everyone has a price. But Janet had stayed. Not for money, not for headlines, not for forgiveness. She stayed because the boys needed her. And he was starting to realize, so did he. Janet looked up as he stepped into the doorway. "You're back," she said softly. Jose nodded. She didn't ask what he'd found. She didn't need to. He crossed the room and sat on the floor beside her chair, knees pulled up. Just quiet. Just present. Josh stirred, pressing closer to her chest. Jose reached out, tentative, and let his hand rest over the boy's back, overlapping hers. Janet didn't pull away. They sat like that a long time. A man, a woman, and a child, wrapped in a silence not of fear, but of rebuilding. One beat at a time. The ballroom was flooded with lights. Rows of cameras blinked like watchful eyes. A sea of polished suits and sleek screens waited to devour every word. It was supposed to be a launch. TechCore's next-generation AI logistics line was scheduled to debut in front of investors, tech giants, and federal contractors. Jose was meant to walk out with coded buzzwords, dazzle them with innovation, let the market drink it in. Instead, he stood behind the podium in a black suit with no tie, throat dry, hands unclenched. There was no pitch deck on the screen. Just silence. He looked out over the crowd, then into the nearest camera. "My name is Jose Martinez," he began. "And I was supposed to tell you about software tonight." A pause. "But that's not the story anymore." The room didn't stir. "Not yet. Last week, someone broke into my home. They bypassed a security system I helped design, one I trusted to protect what mattered most. They didn't take jewelry. They didn't even take money. They took something worse. He let the sentence breathe. They took peace. My sons, James and Josh, were tied together in my own bedroom, left against the body of a woman I trusted like family. A few phones dropped. A few heads tilted. I wasn't supposed to be home. But I was. And what I found there, it's haunted me every day since. The screen behind him shifted, not to diagrams or blueprints, but a simple date. Tuesday, 8:06 p.m. breach window begins. He continued, I hired a man last year. Brandon Kell. Some of you might know him, referred through a legal channel connected to my ex-wife's firm. He installed a backdoor into my home systems, sold access, enabled a leak of highly sensitive merger documents hidden in a biometric safe. There was a rustle. Tension. Now, this wasn't just espionage. It wasn't just theft. It was a manipulation designed to destroy my credibility, my family, and to frame an innocent woman as a scapegoat. The screen changed again, a single line. Janet Cooper, caregiver, target, survivor. She didn't ask for this, Jose said, voice tighter now. She didn't have an alibi because she was the victim. She didn't defend herself online because she was too busy calming my sons. She didn't go on the news. She just stayed. He scanned the crowd again. She didn't need proof to stay. Just love. And for the first time since he'd started, Jose's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I owe her more than protection. I owe her the truth. So I'm giving it, on the record, in front of all of you. This company may be my legacy. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the flash bulbs, the avalanche of tweets, the cameras zooming in to catch whether his eyes were red. It didn't matter. He'd said what needed saying. By the time he got home, it was just after 9. The house was warm again, dim lighting in the hallway, a soft trail of laundry folded on the stairs. He found her in the kitchen, rinsing bottles. The hum of the dishwasher ran low behind her. She didn't look up right away, just kept cleaning. Jose stood there, watching her rinse a small green sippy cup like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. When she did glance over, she didn't speak, just arched a brow. I didn't use your name, Jose said quietly. I didn't want them coming for you. Janet turned off the faucet. You still told the truth, she said. I did. He took a step closer. You didn't ask for any of this. No, she agreed, drying the cup with a dish towel. But I won't walk away. Jose swallowed. There were still headlines outside, still people dissecting her photo, her history, her silence. But in here, in this kitchen, with a magnet on the fridge and one cup in her hand, none of that reached her. You'll be dragged into this, he said again. She met his gaze. Then I'll keep showing up. She placed the sterilized cup on the drying rack and turned back to him. Because they need me. A pause. And maybe so do you. He didn't reply. He just exhaled, slow, unguarded, and sat down at the kitchen island while she moved around him like she had every day since the boys were born. And for the first time, it felt like a home again. Not because it was clean, but because someone had chosen to stay. The house breathed again. It didn't happen all at once, just small shifts. A morning without sirens. A bottle left on the counter because no one was rushing. Light that filtered through the windows instead of being blocked out by curtains and tension. The fevers had broken. The boys had started to laugh again, short bursts at first, then giggles that spilled down the hallway like sunlight after rain. Janet labeled their drawers that afternoon. Not for efficiency, she already knew where everything was, but for permanence. James, 0-12M tops only, read one strip of masking tape. Josh, socks that won't slip. She wrote them slowly in tidy block letters. It wasn't about tidiness. It was about claiming space. Jose found her sitting cross-legged in the nursery, sorting baby wipes into baskets. He leaned against the doorway holding 2 plates of pancakes he'd made for the first time in years. "They're not good," he warned. She smiled. "They don't have to be." He handed her one and sat on the floor with her. No suits, no staff, just legs folded and fingers sticky with syrup while James squealed in his playpen and Josh tried to eat a teething ring sideways. It was quiet, but it wasn't hollow. They moved like people rebuilding from ruin, not with declarations, but with action. With rhythm. Later that day, Jose called her into his office. The folder sat on the desk, cream-colored, thin. He didn't say anything at first, just tapped it with 2 fingers. Janet picked it up, opened the flap, and read the top line. Legal declaration of guardianship, James and Josh Martinez. She froze. "I know this wasn't in your job description," he said gently. "But it's not charity. It's trust." Her hands trembled as she flipped to the signature line. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She signed it quietly, then closed the folder and held it to her chest like a fragile book. Jose watched her for a long time, not just to make sure she was okay, but to remember this moment. To mark it. That evening, it happened. They were in the living room. Janet folding towels on the rug, Jose scrolling through emails on the couch, one eye on the twins. James was standing near the ottoman, steadying himself with both hands. He let go for a heartbeat, then another. Then he took a step. It was clumsy, wobbly, a drunk sailor's swagger, but it was real. He toddled forward. 1, 2, 3 steps, right into Janet's arms. She caught him without surprise, just warmth, as if she'd been waiting all along. "Did you see that?" she called. Jose looked up. She was laughing, holding James high in the air like he weighed nothing. Jose rose slowly, eyes wide, mouth parting before the laugh came. A real one. Not the clipped boardroom chuckle. Not the tired, polite hum. A full, unfiltered sound that cracked open something he hadn't touched in years. Janet looked over her shoulder, still smiling, still holding James. He walked toward her. "Thank you," he said. Simple. Honest. "For what?" "For staying." She just nodded, her eyes soft. "Someone had to," she whispered. And in that house, no longer a crime scene, no longer a fortress, something shifted. It wasn't a resolution. But it was a beginning.